Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the weekly webinar series for Wednesday. My name is John Hazlip, and I'm with Central Office Surveying and Mapping. And today we're going to be working with annotation scale for surveyors and mappers. Annotation scale resizes elements according to the desired plotting scale. And for various ways of controlling the annotation scale lock, please see Christy Holmes' posted webinar, Annotation Scale, Just Do It. It's a very good webinar, and Christy gets into all the little details of how to control annotation scale with the locks. What I'm going to be talking about is how annotation scale affects surveyors and mappers. Now, FDOT is currently in a transition period, and most of the styles have been set to use annotation scale, all the line styles. Guardrails are an exception. There are a few others, but for surveyors, I think that's pretty much the exception. They do not annotate with the scale. They are set to have the posts 12.5 feet apart for realistic purposes, and so roadway design has moved to annotation scale. I'm going to talk about the survey deliverables very shortly, and then I'm going to talk about right-of-way mapping, a couple of different situations that you may show up, may run into when you're doing mapping and seeing the topo files coming across from roadway and from surveying, location survey and design survey, and it affects the way your maps are going to look. Also, the line styles, the way they've been set to annotate now, also will affect how your maps are going to look, especially if you are bringing in already created maps and you're bringing that were created under FDOT 2010 or earlier, and you're trying to bring them up to standard. There will be some effect from this decision of roadway design going to annotation scale. So the first thing I want to talk about is what you see on the screen is a Casey project, and I have set the theme viewer to show utilities. If you look across right here at the settings, this is pretty typical of the way you would set it in Casey, but now with annotation scale, what will happen is if you have the annotation scale lock on, all text being brought in to MicroStation will annotate automatically. If the annotation scale lock is off, it will not annotate. Generally, when I create a Casey project, I think most of you will not have the lock on. So the settings you see here are pretty much what you would want, except for the cell. This is an effect that this has. We have resized the cells to be more realistic, so they won't have odd scales where you multiply them by 5 to get them up to a 50 scale. And so if you put an 8.0 at the cell, it'll under the point display settings in Casey, it will set the cells when they are converted to the correct size. If you want the annotation, the text to annotate with the scale, you'll need to think of these settings right here as being like a pitch, like a 10 pitch or a 12 pitch. If you want it at 08 or an 8 pitch, you would set it to 08. In this case, I'm going to set it to a 0.1 scale and just go on across. I'd set all the text and comments, and I would save it this way into a CDG file and say OK, and then I would view it in Casey. What you're going to note is that In Casey, the cells will look very small, but the text will be correct. When you convert these to MicroStation, they'll look correct. I'm going to show you very quickly how that's going to work. In this case, I am using SS3. However, the annotation scale at SS2 works exactly the same. There's no difference. So as Power Geopack is opening, I am going to go to Casey Project, and I'm going to open up a MicroStation file, and I'm going to start with a file and bring in the Casey CDG so the text will annotate. Now what you note on the screen is I do have the drawing scale open at all times, so I want to look at that. I also have the element information box docked over here at all times. It's become very useful, and I would suggest that you do the same. So I'm going to dock the annotation scale. As you note, right at the moment, the annotation lock is on. So if I bring in a CDG file, and this is one I had just saved, I look at Casey Project, and I'll bring in the file that was set where the text was set to 1/10, and I'll open that, set the cell, set the DGN table, and in this case you want the line styles to be 1. That is the standard now. Everything, all line styles should always be set to 1, and hit the convert button. What you're going to see when I choose the text is down here. You'll see is annotation right here is set to true. If I change the scale, you'll see that line styles change. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this off and show you probably how you'd want to set it. Let me import it one more time. Normally you would want to turn the annotation off when you bring in this CDG file. So if I say import the file again, look at my Casey projects, and in this case I'm going to bring in the utility file at 50, say OK. Set SS3, cell table, set the crosswalk table, change it to 1, hit convert. And what I have here is probably how you want to deliver, in this case, a utility file. Again, if I change the scale, you'll see that the text stays the same, but the line styles will actually scale. If the text is set to, in this case you see now it's set to true, and it's set to 5, and when you deliver the file you'll probably want to set it off. Any text can be changed to false by choosing the edit and selecting by attributes. You can set all text down here. I'll text the text and the text nodes and say select. Did I get it? Execute. I can change them all to false. So now what's going to happen if I select any text? It's going to be false. It will not annotate. And that's pretty much what you're going to see a design file look like. You want the annotation lock on, and you want the line style or the drawing scale set to 1:1. This affects right-of-way mapping, and I'm going to open up a typical topo file and show you what it'll look like. And what you'll see is you see the annotate. This top file is the standards. You'll see the trees, the guardrails look good. If I change this to 1, which is the way it would usually be delivered, you can see the fence line and the tree line are very small, but the guardrails stay the same. How this affects mapping is that when you bring it into a map, it's going to look like this. So the right-of-way mapper has to deal with that. I'm going to open up a right-of-way file here, a right-of-way sheet file, and let me see. I'm going to open up the RWDTL R01 file right here. I believe this will show it. And this is a typical right-of-way map that District 5 so graciously let us use. And what you see here is the line styles are not the way you want them to look. The guardrail is correct, but the trees and the fence line and other custom line styles are set to 1. If you turn the annotation scale on and change this to a 50 scale, for instance, and that's the scale of the map, what you get is a mess. The scale is 1 inch to 50. Now, if you look down below this, you can see the trees now are at the right scale. The fences are at the right scale, but everything else is a problem. So what I want to do is show you that you can easily fix this and bring this sheet up to standards. I'm going to put it back to 1, and I'm going to select all text and set it to false so it will not annotate. And you see here I have my topo file referenced in, so if I turn it on and off, that's the way it'll look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the text by attributes. Again, I'm going to select the text node and text and execute and select all text. I'm going to go into the properties box right down here and set annotation. You see it says varies, but I want to set it all to false so I will not affect the right-of-way text for this sheet, and set it. So now all text is set to not annotate. If I change this to a 50 scale, you still get the line style problems. And if you notice, there's the right-of-way line here has changed. I'm going to go back and forth just a second, show you. So this is, and the right-of-way line has jumped up to 50 times whatever the particular scale. So has all the arrows. So the ECSO has created a tool to fix this. If you look under custom line styles, we can set all of our line styles to a custom line style of 1 just by clicking this button. It actually lets you choose the line style scale. I want to set it to 1, so I'm going to set scale lines, and just like that, it's done. Now when I change it to a 50 scale, what you see is everything looks good. I didn't change the reference file at all. It's still set at up here in the reference file. It's set A equals is on and set to 1 to 1. If I click on that reference file and show you the settings, you can see the detail scale is set to 1 to 50 now, because it's it's projecting those settings. We'll say OK. What's very important that I haven't told you yet, and it's in, Christy mentions it in her webinar, is the model properties are all important. They must be set. You want to have the propagate annotation scale on and the line style set to annotation scale. Normally, when these seed files are opened, you will see the global line style is set to 1, and what that does is that changes things. It will not annotate anything. It controls the scale by the line style itself. So you see, whenever it's set to global line style, the lines do not annotate. The right-of-way lines do not annotate. So setting the model properties is very important. I want to set those to annotation scale and say OK. Just see. Now another situation you may run into is when you have an existing sheet and the topo may be embedded. So I'm going to open up another right-of-way file. And I believe it is this file right here. See if it's the exact same sheet, but in this situation there's not a reference file. The topo is actually embedded. And at first glance, this all looks good. You look at the right-of-way file, the right-of-way lines, they look good. Look down at the trees, they look good. This is very typical. If I click on the fence, you're going to see that the line style parameters, the scale for that fence is 50. But there is a problem in this file, and it's right here. It's guardrail. Remember I said that the guardrails do not annotate with the scale. So if I select this guardrail, you see right here something's wrong. It's not showing the guardrail. The reason is the same. It's set to 50. If I individually set this to 1 right here, you'll see now this portion of the guardrail looks correct. What I could do is go in and select all the guardrails and set them to 50, or set them all to 1, and then all the other lines will look correct. They will be set to 50. The guardrails will be set to 1. So you could go through and do that. Another way to approach this would be to make sure that the model properties are set to annotation scale right here. use the tools, go into action, custom line styles, scale them all to 1. I'm going to do that and say scale. Now all the guardrails look correct. However, our tree line, our fence lines, our right-of-way lines don't look correct. So we have to annotate them. And if I set them to 50, they look good, but any text that was set to true will now jump up in scale. I want to show you a little effect. I can change these individually. I could select these or select them by attributes. In this case, I'm just going to select these, and I'm going to go down here to annotation and set that to false. I didn't get these too. Let me go ahead and get all of these. Text nodes, set them all to false. What you see is a common effect. Because of the justification of this text, now it is out of place. So what I found is if you change the text before you annotate it to any other scale, it will actually hold its position. So I'm going to undo this, put this text back the way it was, change this to 1, and then select all my text. Select by attributes. I'll select the text and the text node and say execute. I've selected all my text. I'm going to go down here and change it to is annotation is to false. Now when I change the scale of the text, it's in the correct position. So with just a few clicks, you can clean up a map, set it to standards, set all your annotation scale, all your custom line styles to the proper scale. In this case, they all should be set to 1, and you can work with your topo files. We're starting to get a lot of calls on this, so be aware this is an issue. Now there's another situation I want to show you, and that is actually building a right-of-way map file and some of the things you can do. So I'm going to open another file, and I'm going to open a master right-of-way file in this case, and I'll choose here's our one right here that should do it, and say open. And you've got some odd situations here because of the annotation scale. In this case, we've got a master right-of-way file, and I've got elements in it. These elements will start to annotate. I want to show you what cells will annotate for a right-of-way mapping and what will not. So if I open the cell library here, you can see that the arrows annotate. The block numbers have been set to annotate right here. The CL symbol and the BL symbol right here also annotate. All the monuments have been set to annotate. The parcel bubbles have been set to annotate. And these are the cells that will annotate. Your property line symbols and your land hooks will also annotate, and Here's another monument. So the monuments, land hooks, parcel bubbles, block numbers, things that you want to annotate will, the others will not. And as you saw, as I was changing it from a 2000 scale to a 100 scale or to a 50 scale, you can see how these cells will annotate. This can be very handy because what you can do is set up models and reference files that will take advantage of this. What I want you to do is show you the models that I've got set in this file. In this case, I've got the alignments. Now with SS3 and SS4, you'll see civil geometry. Alignments will actually be an object that will have the tick marks and the stationing embedded in the object. However, they will still need to be set at a specific scale, just like what we have right now. I can set what I've done here is I've set a model for a 40 scale alignment. I've also got a 50 scale alignment, so it looks a little bigger, and I've got a 100 scale alignment. And what this allows you to do is to choose the alignment you wish to have in each sheet directly from a model in the master right-of-way file. I think this is a very efficient way to do this. You can also set models up for sheets and for topo and other types of data that you want in here, and we are starting to see those types of innovative approaches to right-of-way mapping already. I want to also show you any reference files that we have connected. In this case, I don't have any connected, but if I'm in my sheet, what I can do is I can reference right into this model or to the default model. So what you want to do is you want to think in terms, when you're creating your sheets or you're creating your master right-of-way file, you want to think in terms of what scale do you want to show in your sheets. It makes it easy to do different sheets at different scales. By using the annotation scale, I don't have to change this particular set of elements. I don't have to have 2 and 3 and 4 sets of these. All I need is one. And so let me give you an example of how that works. I'm going to show you how you can, in this case, you can reference these to each other. I can turn these on and off to preview my sheets, but I don't want to do that right now. What I want to do is I want to open a sheet file. So I'm going to go to this one right here, this RW detail sheet, and open it up. And show you how this is all referenced in, and it's referenced in at 100 scale. Let me open up my references and show you if I turn all of these off, I don't have much in this file. What I have in this particular file is the sheet border, some detail borders, a few errors that I don't want to annotate, that I don't want them to move or change with annotation, and a few of these. Even though they will change if I actually would like them to, I could change these to 200 or whatever. I'm going to think in terms of this scale for this sheet. So all I have to do is put in my foreshortening in order to make this parcel fit on this sheet. My bar scale and my north arrow are not going to annotate. Turn the reference files back on and show you a little bit about these detail sheets. What's really powerful about this tool is whatever's happening in the reference file doesn't affect the current sheet, the active file that you're in, even if you change the settings on that reference file. Once you've referenced in this file, referenced in your reference, the setting, you can go back to that reference and change any of these settings, and it will not affect this file. I want to do that real quick just to show you. We go back to the master right-of-way file here and show you. I can delete something like this subdivision area. I'll delete it and show you. It'll be gone next time we look at the other sheet. But I can change these to any scale I want. I can set it to annotate, change it to 1,000 for instance. Go back to the sheet file that this is referenced into, and you see nothing has changed. The subdivision line is gone because I actually removed it from the file, but none of the scales did not change. And this is true whether you're doing details or whether you're doing it right here in the master file or wherever in the sheet or the master. Any references hold their settings and their scale. If you want to look at what these are, for instance, I'm going to look down here at this detail A, this square detail. If I double click and look at it, you can see it's set to 1 inch equals 30. I could affect it by changing it here, but I don't want to do that. If I look at detail B, let me double click on that, and you'll see that one was brought in at 1 inch equals 20 feet, or 1 to 20. The alignment that I chose for this particular one is the 1 inch equals 100. You can see it's the model Align RD 100. So just by setting your models to the scales you want, setting up your models, setting up your references, all of this can be controlled. I'm going to let me turn off just to show you. See, I can turn off. I could reference in, for instance, back to the original right-of-way file. I'm going to reference in that one, the master right-of-way file, and up here under model I'll choose a different alignment. Say OK, and you see what happens is it's brought in and it's using the 50 scale alignment. So I can change that. I can turn the original one back on. You'll see it's back to 100. I want to give you a little sample of how I set these details, because these details are reference files. They're not clips. They are actually directly from the master right-of-way file. So what I found, what you want to do is, if you go into the master right-of-way file and you have an area you want to show in a detail, go into that master file. I'll show something. I'll just show this general area right in here, and I'll actually, just to show you how the reference work, I'm going to set this to something crazy like 2000. See, and I'm going to go back to my sheet file. I was going to show that. I think I'll just show the whole master right-of-way file looking like this. Okay. Let me go back to 100 on this. All right. Okay, so let me go back to the sheet file. Like I said, it doesn't matter what the settings are in the master right-of-way file. It holds it here in the sheet file. And I'm going to create just put a little box over here and reference in again that right-of-way master file. I want to show the effect it has. So I'm going to open up my reference. I'm going to attach one more time the master right-of-way file. Say OK. And I'm going to just set it up there to 2000. Like I said, just something that's crazy, but I just want to show you the effect it has. I say OK. Now I have referenced this in, but you don't see it on the screen. And the reason is because of the scale. If I do a fit, you'll see that file, and I actually referenced in the model, which is not what I wanted to do. Let me attach this one. Okay. I want to attach the master right-of-way file, but not the model. I want the default. That one's at 2000. Okay. So you see what happened is, because of the scale, it puts it somewhere else. If I change this scale, here it is down at the bottom, to say 1 inch equals 1,000, say OK, it actually moved. If you noticed, it actually moved. It moved a little bit. So to create a detail, what I would do is hit the move, actually move this, and let me fit this to screen now and do it. I'm going to select the reference file I just selected, hit the move, move it up here, and stick it in here. And that's pretty much how you would set, that's exactly how I set these. Instead of setting it at 1,000 or 2,000, I just set this to 20. The arrows automatically change. I could actually change this in the file to something more reasonable, and I want to do that, just give you a taste of what that would be like. I'll change it to something like 1 inch equals 10 feet, say OK, and note that it disappeared again. What it has done is it's moved because of the scale. In this case, it moved up northeast of it. So what I would do is go in, select the file again, and move it. In this case, I would move it down in here, and I may have to move it again to get something that you can see. Let me do that again. And put it in somewhere in here. Oh. Change this to a block. I'll put a fence around it. And I'm going to clip the boundary here. And you see what I've done? If I put in arrows in here now at this scale, this could be a detail sheet. The point of all of this is that between the master file, the detail sheet, and the references, there's a wide variety of settings. I want to point out a couple of those settings right here before we go to questions. You have global line style scale here, master, reference. You can turn on and off annotation here. You also you can scale the line styles by the reference scaling. So there's a lot you can do, and there's no way I could show you everything here, but like I said, the point is you have a wide variety of possibilities. Mapping can now become innovative. Annotation doesn't limit you to specific scales and duplicate elements within a file. And I want to thank you all for viewing this. I hope you got something out of it. I showed you a lot of possibilities, and hopefully it'll be something you can carry and use in your FDOT projects. That concludes the webinar, and I'd like to now move on to questions. Let's see. And do I have any questions coming up? If you'll bear with me just a moment. It says, what is the point of having annotative line scales if you're setting your text to be false? It's a good question. What I have shown you is pretty much a transition period. Setting the text to annotate is also works, but you have to be aware of where that text is. As you saw in the township range line text on the right-of-way map, justification affects it. So if it's not centered, it will move. If you have it justified left or left upper or left lower or right upper, right lower, or even middle upper and lower, that text will significantly move. So be aware that in some cases you want to annotate text, but you'll need to know that you'll need to make sure that it's justified in the center if you want that text to stay in the same place. Otherwise, it's a very manual. It's a manual operation. With patience and working with it, it will you'll be able to annotate text also. Saved views are just, the question is, how does annotation scale affect, or how is it affected by using saved views? To my knowledge, the view is only saved. It's the area, the spot where you saved it. It doesn't have any effect on annotation. So these are well, if there's no more questions, I don't see any more questions. I want to thank you all for coming, and this concludes the webinar. Have a good day.